welcome to my channel. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Cece, and let's get started. So, obviously it's the same day as my previous video where I gave you my life updates. All I did was change my shirt, literally, that's all I've done. This video is very different from any video I've done. It is very personal. It is also... There's a lot that's going into this video. If you're watching, you already see the title of it. You know what it's about. And yeah, so this week, starting from the 8th to the 14th, it is Suicide Awareness Week. If you know me personally, you know that suicide is a very big factor in my life for multiple reasons. It is just like a dark cloud that just stays over my head at all times, no matter what. It does not go away. So, a couple things. I do want to go over some statistics. I want you to stay tuned, and you will hear my story and how I deal with it and what has been my challenges with it. If you are interested, stay tuned. You can watch it. If not, maybe this video doesn't pertain to you. Maybe you want to learn about it. Maybe you are going through things and you don't know how to cope with them, or whatever it may be. Before I get into the statistics, I do want to go ahead, put on the screen the number to contact. If you or someone you know needs help, it is the crisis hotline. It is a number that you can call. It's a 1-800 number. I'm pretty sure, like, that means it's toll free or whatever. So there is a number that you can text. And for me personally, I have texted this number 2 times now, I think. Yeah. If you just text HOME, HOME, to 741-741, I think you can also text help and stay. I have personally texted that number. For me, I do not like to reach out to people that I know and tell them that I'm struggling with things. I would prefer to text someone that does not know me, does not know where I live. Yes, they will have my telephone number, or you can use the texting app if you want. It really doesn't matter. I enjoy texting more than I like talking on the phone, because honestly, I'm probably not going to tell you the truth if we're talking on the phone because I'm going to be too nervous. I have anxiety. I'm not going to talk to somebody on the phone about my personal problems. That's just who I am. I don't know if you're the same. If you are, you can also go online to save.org. There are links, and you can find, online chatting, things like that. I have used the online chat, so I know that it works. Let's get into these statistics. This is probably going to be a very long video because I'm going to try to run through these, and then I'm obviously going to tell you my story. There's a few statistics on the suicide awareness. So, suicide is the 10th leading cause in the U.S., and that's for all ages. Suicide does not discriminate. Suicidal thoughts do not discriminate. And I know I just got very serious, but this is a very serious thing. Back to my statistics. So, every day estimated 123 Americans die by suicide. That is a lot. And that's just Americans. That's not worldwide. There is one death by suicide every 12 minutes. Depression affects 20% to 25% of Americans 18 and older in 1 year. That is a lot. And me, myself, I am part of that 20 to 25%. Suicide takes the lives of over 44,965 Americans in a year. If you're watching this, I want you to know that I don't want you to be one of these statistics. And even though I struggle with it every single day of my life, I'm still here, and you can still be here as well. You just have to honestly fight and keep fighting. And I know that it's hard. I know that it's a struggle, but I also know that it's not an answer. It's not the plan. There's a plan, but that's not the plan. Okay, back to my statistics. 80% to 90% of people who seek treatment for depression are treated successfully using therapy and or medication. I take Lexapro, and I don't know if taking medication is helpful or if it's not helpful. I skip sometimes. I don't mean to. I just forget to take it. And then next thing I know, 4 or 5 days has went by. I start getting moody. I start getting grumpy. I start having suicidal thoughts. It's a lot. So I don't know if treatment will work for you. If it does, take it regularly. Estimated 250,000 people every year become suicide survivors. I am one of them. If you're watching this and you think about suicide, I want you to be that statistic. I want you to be one of these 250,000 people like myself that become suicide survivors. Nearly 800,000 people die worldwide to suicide. That would be roughly around 40 seconds. A suicide is committed worldwide every 40 seconds. You know, when I wrote these statistics down, I didn't get emotional, but when I read them and I talk about them, it becomes very emotional for me personally. So, I'm going to continue to try to just get through this. There is one suicide for every 25 suicide attempts. Worldwide, suicide is the second leading cause of death. Men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Men normally commit suicide by firearms, whereas women choose to do it by poisoning, probably like pills, things like that. Women are more likely to have suicidal thoughts rather than actually doing it. And then my last statistic here is the LGBT is 3 times more likely to commit suicide. Those were just a few of the statistics. If you go to save.org, you can read about them. You can Google suicide awareness. You will find plenty and plenty of links. So, the moment you've all been waiting for is my story, and I'm going to talk about it. If I get emotional, I'll probably cry, and you won't get to witness that because I will cut it out. So, welcome to my story of dealing with suicide and suicidal thoughts. And I will insert now that this is a trigger warning. Some of my story could be very difficult for people to hear or understand. I'm not putting blame on anybody for anything. I think that me personally, I take things too serious. I have never been able to actually cope with letting things go in one ear and out the other when people say harmful things or hurtful things to me. Let's talk. Take a sip of water, take some breathing exercises, because my story may be hard for you to hear. Suicide for me has been something that I've dealt with for a very long time. I think suicide came into my mind, honestly, from learning about it in school and learning about bullying and learning about all of that. And I know that suicide awareness is very, very, very important. I will say for me personally, though, learning about suicide and knowing that that is something you can do to just make all the pain go away, that's where it came from. That's where I started having those thoughts. Because before you learn about it, sometimes you don't know about it unless you deal with it personally from family. When I started learning about it in school is where I started thinking about it. And they show you all these videos on YouTube. I don't know if they do it now, but they used to. They used to show all these videos on YouTube about bullying and, children committing suicide because they were bullied, things like that. And for me, that's where my thoughts started coming. I don't feel like I was ever bullied to the point I wanted to kill myself. I think that being called fat and being called ugly and told to kill myself is what made me want to kill myself, basically. I began having suicidal thoughts when I was in the 5th grade. That's where it started. That's where I started having all my issues. I started being called fat. I was called ugly. I started dating basically in 5th grade, actually like having a boyfriend and spending time with him. And, my mom didn't know, but now she knows. So that had a lot to do with it, is finally being in a relationship. Not really a relationship, but to teach their own. Starting to realize what it's like to be hurt by somebody that you thought you loved. I'm going to point out that I'm not trying to blame anybody for anything. I'm really not. I'm just simply stating some things that caused me to feel this way. My mom, I love her so much, so much, and I think that she's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my entire life. But also, she used to have a really bad drinking problem, and not to throw her business out there, and I apologize, Mom, if you're watching. This is just part of my story. She had a really bad drinking problem, and because she had this drinking problem, we had a lot of issues between us. Physical issues, mental issues, emotional issues. We had a lot of issues. Period. We just had a lot of issues. And so I'm not blaming her by any means. I'm simply just saying that some of our issues just have carried on with me for so long. And there's things that I have not been able to get over. And so it does still stay with me. But I'm not blaming her. I think that me telling my story is making me very uneasy. And I think maybe that's why I'm not able to tell y'all the story how I envision telling the story. I began cutting myself probably in the 6th grade, I think. Was it 5th or 6th? It was 5th or 6th grade. I started cutting myself. And I'm not talking like with a razor blade or the excessive cutting that everybody is so well known to. I use scissors. Why I use scissors, I don't know. I cleaned them before I used them. I cleaned them after. I don't know why I chose to do that. That, to me, I look back, that was so stupid of me to do. I don't know why I did it. I don't. But I did. And I wish I could go back and not do that. Suicidal thoughts stay with me almost daily. Most of what triggers me to think like that is if I get in an argument with the person that I'm with, or I get in an argument with my mom, I get in an argument with my sister, I get in an argument with pretty much anybody that is there for me. I begin to feel extremely alone, and scared and hopeless and helpless, and just, I always feel like that's the only way to turn. Like, that's the only way for me to get relief. Like, that's just it. I had this as a bullet point at the very end of my notes here, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it. So, NF, if you don't know who he is, go look at his music. He has a song called Hate Myself. And the lyrics, well, one of the lines in his lyrics says, "Suicide thoughts come and go like a ghost to me, but I don't want to die, I just want to get relief." And that is the prime lyric, verse, line that I've ever heard that I related to. Because I do not want to die. I want to live, but I also want to escape from my thoughts. They don't go away. They're always here. Hell, moments before I started doing this video, before I started doing my video about my update on my life, I was writing these statistics, and for some reason I started thinking about it. And I wasn't thinking like, let's do this or anything. I just sat there and just started thinking about it. For what? I don't know. I'll never know, but whatever. Back to my story. Mostly when I get super down or I feel helpless or I feel alone is when all my thoughts start circling and they start just pounding on me. I cry a lot. I am a Cancer, so I cry anyways, but I cry a lot whenever I'm just down. And a lot of times I shut down. I don't talk to anybody about it. I honestly refuse to talk to anybody about it except for texting the number 741741. It's in my phone as stay, and anytime I feel down, I can just text them, and so I do. I feel more comfortable talking to a stranger than talking to people I know, especially when it comes to those kind of issues, because a lot of times with suicide, people say that it's that you're doing it for attention or whatever it is. Attention is always the key word when people talk about suicide. They always say, you're just doing it for attention. You're just doing this. You're just doing that. But honestly, no. And the biggest problem about suicide is people refuse to talk about it. It is like this subject that just cannot be talked about. And that is why there are so many suicides, because people make it where suicide is this off-limits topic to talk about. And we get scared to talk about it because every time we do, somebody somewhere is telling us that we're doing it for attention, or that's a selfish thing to do, that's careless, that's, they're just pounding all these words that are not helpful, they are not positive, they are more deteriorating to us than they are uplifting. So if someone comes to you and they're talking about suicide, give them positive words, positive feedback. Don't tell them that it's careless. Don't tell them that it's selfish. Tell them that it's okay and it's going to be okay. Tell them to make it to the next day. Tell them to reach out to God. Text 741741. Call the hotline. Tell them to breathe. Tell them to cry it out. Tell them to listen to music. Tell them to watch a movie. Tell them to do what they love. Tell them to cuddle an animal. Give them a hug. I don't care what you have to do. But do not tell them negative words. Okay. Just had a very emotional moment. I'm back. I'm red. Because obviously I just started crying because I got very, very emotional about this. So, I have never attempted suicide, as in taken pills. I've never held a gun to my head. I have never cut my wrist. I've never done any of that, okay? When I used to cut way back in the day, I cut my legs. And I don't know if you actually could kill yourself that way. I don't know. Don't want to know. But what I know is I did it, and I don't know why I did it. Probably to just fit in, but it also did do a little bit of relief. Not going to sit here and say that it didn't, because it did. So, this next part is very difficult for me to talk about, as well as it's going to be difficult for you to hear. If you want to skip over it, you may. I have had a few times where I have physically almost attempted suicide. 9 times out of 10, I'm either in water or I'm driving. I have thought of several ways to die. I have struggled with fighting all my thoughts. The main one that sticks out to me the most is 2014. It was September, around this time, maybe even this week. I don't know. I just know that it was right after I got done burying my best friend. I had just got done getting in an argument with my mom. At the time, I lived in a camper at the top of her driveway, and I was very, very lonely. I was very upset. She had came up there. She was a little bit on the drunk side. We got into it really bad. Basically was telling her that I wanted to kill myself and I didn't want to be here. And I was just struggling a lot. And, sometimes people don't know how to cope with that. Sometimes people don't know what to say. Sometimes they just don't know what to do. And so she ended up leaving. She went back home. She did actually give me a hug. A hug can definitely make a difference. I will say that. Just telling somebody it's going to be okay makes a difference. So, she left. She went home. I sat there. I cried and cried and cried. And just this dark cloud just was weighing down on my head. It was just, I couldn't escape it. It was just there. It was like all here. And it was on my shoulders, and it felt terrible. I felt so bad. I felt like I just literally could not go on. I got in my car. I went down my street, made a left, started driving, kept driving. And from that point to the next point I'm going to talk about, I don't remember any of it. It's honestly a blur. So from me making the left and driving, I don't remember it. I just know that I was crying, basically, is all I know. Was going to attempt killing myself. I regret it because it stays with me a lot. I think about that day and how I felt, and I think about what would have happened, or should it have happened, or, it's just, there's a lot that surrounds that day. So I drove this car. I had no intentions of coming back to my camper. I had no intentions on living. I had no intentions on anything except for dying. And I came up to a church. I don't know if it was on the left. I think it was on the right. I don't really remember. I have no clue. And if you want the truth, I don't even know if the church exists. I don't know anything. I just know that there was a church. Maybe it was on the left. I really don't know. So I pull into this church parking lot after going about 80 miles an hour down this road in the dark around 12 o'clock in the morning, between 12 and 1, just going 80, 90 miles an hour down this road. I could have hit a deer. I could have ran off the road. I could have hit a tree. So many things could have happened. My power steering could have went out. My brakes could have not worked. So many factors can go into that moment. And when I came up and I seen a church, I pulled over in the parking lot and I just broke down. I broke down worse than I've ever broke down in my entire life. I just remember crying. I started praying. And a lot of times I come back to prayer as something that has always helped me. I'm not a very religious person by any means. I don't go to church, and I'm just not that person. I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God. So I just remember crying and hurting and being in so much pain because I just knew I wasn't going to do it. And I was mad and I was miserable because I didn't do it. But in that same moment, I was so thankful for not doing it. And at the time, I was 18 years old. I'm not going to say that I haven't been in that exact same situation and chose not to, because I have. There's been at least 4 times that I know of where I have been in a position where I was going to do it. And that is going to be very hard for my family to hear, and even my partner to hear, and my friends to hear, or coworkers, or whatever it may be. I have definitely been there at least 4 times. Another time, I started having an anxiety attack while I was at work. And it was so weird because I had never really experienced a full-on anxiety attack before. And so I went up to my manager's desk and I cried and I cried and I cried. And like I was just panicking, and I was like, I really need to leave for the day. I can't do this. So I left for the day. I drove because I was going to go home. And I was going to just sit there and get my life together, basically. And instead, I chose to drive to Chimney Rock, North Carolina. And that is where I decided that I wasn't going to come back. Got up there. I went and sat on the rocks. I sat by the water. I tried to mellow myself out. I was just so upset and so depressed and so helpless, and I was having relationship issues at the time, which didn't help any of my feelings I already had. A lot of it, honestly, is a blur, and I think that a lot of people who have suicidal thoughts, or they're going to attempt to do suicide, or they're thinking about doing suicide, when you're in those moments and you are so upset or mad, it just becomes a blur. You don't remember it until the moment where you are feeling like it's going to be okay. When I realized it was going to be okay, same manager called me. We're actually still friends to this day. I think we always will be, and I am so thankful for her. She called me that day, or that afternoon rather, and we talked on the phone for probably an hour. She was actually still sitting at her desk at work. And she talked to me and talked to me and talked to me, and it was very emotional because I couldn't stop crying. We were talking about it, and I just knew that I was going to end my life. And the more I talked to her about it, the more I convinced myself that this was not going to happen. So I chose again to stay alive and keep fighting, and that's what I encourage all of you to do. Just keep fighting. I can't say it's going to be okay. Can't say it gets better. But I'll tell you, tomorrow's another day. If you can just go to sleep and wake up the next day and find something to be positive about, whether it's being alive, having an animal, having a kid, whatever makes you happy. Just find that little bit of happiness to hold on to make it to the next day. I'm going to end that saying that I cope with my suicidal thoughts on my own. Or, again, texting that number, but mainly on my own. For me, I honestly have to rely on myself because I refuse to talk to people around me about that kind of issue. I listen to music, I watch TV, I cuddle my dogs, I get out of the house. A lot of times I get out of the house, and I just go somewhere where I know I'm going to be happy, whether it's the lake or sitting at the park or just swinging. It's normally nature or like animals. That's my go-tos. So that's how I cope with it. If you're watching this and you're thinking about killing yourself, the best advice I can give is to just please fight to the next day. Just please fight. Just make it to the next day. The emotional pain that will come on to people around you, even if it's people that aren't close to you, it is going to tear some people apart. And then it's going to create suicidal thoughts in their mind. And that's where I'm going to leave this video. Watching this back is probably going to be emotional for me. Editing this is going to be emotional for me. And for those of you watching it, it may get a little emotional for you as well. I apologize to anybody that's watching this that may feel some responsibility on who I am and how I feel. I want everybody to know that it's not your fault. None of it's your fault for how I feel. This is where I'm going to get off here. I'm not going to ask you to like this video. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe to my channel. I'm simply going to ask you to reach out to your family, reach out to your friends, reach out to anybody that may be dealing with something, or just simply reach out to somebody and tell them that you love them and you're there for them or you're proud of them. Just reach out and tell as many people as you can that you care about them. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. And with that said, I'm going to get off here. Thank you for watching the video. I'm sorry it's so long and that I'm scatterbrained because I don't think that I got through half of what I wanted to talk about. So this is where I'm done, and your story's not over. Keep fighting. Make it to the next day. I promise, I promise, I promise. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel, whether that tunnel is 20 years long. Eventually, there will be light at the end. You just have to keep fighting and fighting and pushing yourself to get to the end of the light. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Peace out. As I'm getting super emotional, but gonna get off here. So, bye guys.